Hello everyone. I have got so much work to do. It's only a month since the federal election. I've got so much work to do. I don't know what order to do it all in, but I just want to make this video quickly because I've got so much work to do, but I just want to say that the most important thing at the moment that I want to say to the public is that the federal election is absolutely rigged. Liberal and Labor have got elections rigged in Australia. I'm 100% positive about that. I have no doubt in my mind at all now. And I'll point to a whole list of anomalies that have come up in that 2019 federal election, May 2019 election. It's rigged. It's got to be rigged. They've been controlling the parliaments for over 120 years, federal and state. And here's a list of reasons that came up. It's no miracle win for the Liberal Party. Everybody hates the Liberal Party supposedly, and yet apparently they've got this miracle win. It's not a miracle win at all. They've got it rigged. These are the reasons I've come up with. There were 12 new parties, 12 new federal parties registered since mid-January 2019. 12 parties. If we have a look at how many parties were registered since the Second World War in Australia, registered and deregistered because supposedly they don't win seats, it would have to be hundreds. And I can do the research on that and get the numbers and the names of the parties, but it all takes time getting all this evidence. So 12 new parties since mid-January 2019, before a May 2019 federal election, and apparently they claim none of those parties won any seats. Also, Clive Palmer spent $60 million and they say he won no seats. The corporate media was reporting that the majority of Australians are sick and tired of the major parties. Well, they've made them the major parties, not that, they've just made themselves that. And in particular, the Leader, which is a print media publication, The Leader, which has got to be over about 100 years old, said that in emails to the candidates that up to 70% of the voting public were sick and tired of the government. And apparently they've got this miracle win. So, you know, all the facts don't add up. Also, 55 consecutive public news polls saying Liberal won't win the election since 2016. That's not 55 here and there, every dotted along. That's 55 consecutive public news polls since 2016 said they wouldn't win, and apparently it's a miracle win. Scrutineers from the new parties and independents complaining that number one votes are being put on the Liberal Labor pile. That's across the country. I've got from other leaders, party leaders, complaints. And also that in the last federal election and this federal election, that when they complain, they get kicked out of the polling booth. Also with the scrutineering, a lot of the scrutineering is being done, most of the scrutineering is being done after the weekend of the federal election. So the whole scrutineering process is not proving to be transparent at all. Anyway, the numbers are being put in by the government behind closed doors. They're not put in the computer when the scrutineers are there in front of them. The government numbers are put in behind closed doors. Now, what I think has been happening in Australia for a long time is that Liberal Labor have got elections rigged. They're putting prefix numbers in the computers before the election, and then it's all just a show. Also, they doubled the cost of elections twice since 2013. From $500 to $1,000. Now they've doubled it again just in the last election to $2,000 just to go on the ballot. So those two parties, again, acting in a criminal manner, just in regards to the electoral system itself. Now, it would be easier for them to put in prefix numbers. Oh, before I talk about that, I want to say that what would a miracle win have looked like? A miracle federal election win would have looked like this. All the new patriotic parties and the independents, all those new parties, the 12 new parties that were registered, a lot of them were patriotic parties, they would have won seats. There would have been 9 or 10 or 12 new politicians in the parliaments, new seats won, but there are none. That would have been a miracle win. That would have been what God would have rewarded as a miracle win to the new parties and independents, not to that party. And that man, Scott Morrison, can claim to be a Christian, but he's not a Christian. He goes to a prosperity preaching church, which is antithetical to the New Testament, where Jesus said the love of money is the source of all kinds of evil in this world. And Paul the Apostle, and all through the New Testament, it talks about how the love of money is the source of all kinds of evil in this world. So he is not a Christian. He is not talking about all the everyday issues that everyone is going through and how we are suffering at the hands of these corrupt and criminal politicians. With no doubt in my mind now, with all the evidence that they've got these elections rigged, that they're putting in prefix numbers in the computers. And this Tom Rogers bloke who's running the commissioner is a former military man. He is the commissioner of the Australian Electoral Commission. He's a former military man. He is just a puppet for Liberal Labor. Now, what I want is for the other leaders of the other parties, the new parties and independents, and all the people in those parties, members of those parties, their executives, all their candidates, all the people who voted for all these new parties and independents to make videos and publicly demand that these politicians be jailed, that they be removed, that our military and our federal police and state police need to jail these politicians, Liberal Labor. They have to be jailed. If I never win but go down in history as the woman or the person that got rid of these corrupt politicians by whatever means convincing the police, the state, federal and state police and our military to jail them, then I would be happy with that. I would be happy with that. That's what justice would be. We will never have justice if that doesn't happen. And then 2 weeks after the election, 2 or 3 weeks after the election, they've got the Chinese military coming here into Sydney Harbour. 3 destroyers, Chinese destroyers, in battle mode with the position of the flag. And also someone told me that 12 fighter jets off the Queensland coast. As well as they bringing in the Chinese military after they shot at our fighters in the South China Sea, which was reported by our military, and those treasonous politicians, Liberal and Labor, collaborating economically and the military with the Chinese and Asian nations. They can just walk in and take over, and they know that. Their military is bigger than our entire population. And they absolutely know that. Well, they know that our politicians are treasonous. They know that they're stupid. And they waited till after the federal election. They were supposedly on their way back from an exercise in the Middle East. And what they drop into Australia supposedly on a return trip from the Middle East. What a load of crap. That's an act of war. That's an act of war against our own people doing that. And they well and truly proved that they can walk in here and take over any time. If the patriotic politicians had won, if we had won, they would not be doing that. They would not be doing that. And those politicians, Liberal Labor, now making all these strong long-term military alliances with the Chinese and Asians, and that's it. They're not even talking about the Americans, which means that tie is severed. They've got the Chinese coming in here in battleships into Sydney Harbour. It's over. It's already over. What can we do? Even the police were on Sydney Harbour flashing their lights and sirens, because they didn't know what was happening. The media didn't know what was happening. With 3 Chinese battleships rocking up to Sydney Harbour. Oh, Morrison says, well, yeah, supposedly we know all about it. This is all planned and da-da-da. Bullshit. If they planned it, then they're absolutely guilty of treason and they're willing to give us over to communist China and any other Asian nation. Look at Indonesia. And these other Asian nations, economically, they're acting in a treasonous manner. It's about treason. Do you understand what treason actually is? Treason is when your own politicians betray your own people The people born in this country and the people that have lived here for decades who really call themselves Australians, you betray your own people for foreign interests. That results in the death of your own people. That's why treason is such a serious issue. It's serious because our people are being murdered, killed off by those politicians for political power, for foreign interests. And they're using the police in the way that they're doing have been harming our own people for foreign interests and for their power. So we have to make videos asking the police to arrest those politicians and go and fly around and get all the patriotic politicians and put them in the federal and state parliaments so we can save our own country. And that is the only way it can be done. You can't win at the ballot. You spend millions of dollars, waste millions of dollars and your life trying to win when they've got rigged elections. How easy is it to rig elections? You know what? It's easier for them to have rigged federal elections than anything else, than try to justify any sort of, oh, these few politicians won or they didn't win or whatever. That is the easiest way to rig elections, by putting prefix numbers in the computers before the election. So when the nominations are closed 6 weeks before the election, all the parties are listed, all the candidates are known because the nominations have closed. Then they only have to pay one government worker to sit back in every electorate and make up prefix numbers, and before close of poll 6 p.m, bang, they just publish those figures, and then the corporate media, bang, bang, Liberal Labor, Liberal Labor, Liberal Labor, and that's it. That's how easy it is to rig elections in this country, with the way that they run it. It is so easy, and I had signs out there, stickers out there, 50,000 flyers. I had some corporate media coverage. I was out there with the people all the time. And they said I got 2,000 votes. That's ridiculous. I'm getting a lot more votes than what they're saying. And the votes, how do I know? The votes are not even going where they should be going, because it's all done behind closed doors. The voter is not putting the numbers in the computer. The voters are not putting their own votes in the computer. The government is putting them in the computer behind closed doors, and those electoral commission people are all just appointed puppets for those parties. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. And now we're in a lot of danger because of their military and economic alliances with Asian nations. And it's got nothing to do with racism or anything like that. That's garbage. I could write a whole book on the politics of racism and how they are acting treason, and the politics of racism, how they're acting in a treasonous manner over and over and over again to kill us off, to get rid of us, to get rid of Australians of European descent and Australians of Aboriginal descent. The same way they got rid of the majority of the Aboriginal people, they're now doing the same thing to Australians of European descent. And there's so much evidence for it, so much evidence, including selling farms and ports and airstrips to foreigners and land and resources. It's all being controlled by foreign interests, which is treason. It's treason, results in the death of our own people. So the police, if they're Australian-born police and all women in the police, more Australian-born women and Australian-born men need to become police officers, and you need to go and arrest those politicians. If you just do that one thing, you can turn this entire nation around to what it's supposed to be, on the destiny that it is supposed to be, and it is not what it is currently at. And you can save the nation. And if the federal and state police turn around and arrest those politicians for all their crimes, all the murder of the people in the government facilities, all the homelessness, which is government murder, all the government-driven suicide, all the stealing, they steal billions of dollars from the public through ASIC, through the banks, the court system, fine system. They use you to steal. They use you to steal and harm the people. They steal people's children in the thousands, in the hundreds of thousands over the past 100 years. All that evidence. You have so much evidence. The way they're using you, the federal and state police, to harm the public, to harm the Australian-born people, is evidence. You know they're doing this. They've been using you for this purpose. And they're going to replace you with foreigners increasingly so that we have absolutely no power. We are not armed and they are armed, and that's it. And that's what they want. So if you're a woman born in this country or a man born in this country, you should become a police officer and arrest those politicians. I will make videos for the rest of my life praising you and worshipping you if you do that. Because that is the point of justice. And you have to get patriotic politicians and put them in the parliaments. People born in this country. The only people in our parliaments who can work in our parliaments and in the government are Australian-born people, which is what the federal and state police. You need to arrest every person in this country working in the government that is not born in this country is guilty of treason. You have to go and arrest them and deport them. They are guilty of treason, which is very serious because it results in the death of our own people. So federal and state police need every foreign-born person in the parliament. If they're not born in this country, if they're born in a different country and they're working in our state and federal parliaments, you have to go and jail them, arrest them for treason, and then deport them. If they are working in the government, any government department, taxation, even their own police and military, anyone working in the government, in the public transport system, in any finance department, any health, hospitals, schools, everything. All the foreigners working in our government schools and hospitals and every government department is guilty of treason. They have to be arrested and deported. Every other country out there protects their own nation. Every Asian country is a protectionist nation. Just about every one of them. And most of African nations now are protectionist. Middle East. The only protectionist countries that act in a treasonous manner are Western nations. They bring in foreigners, they betray their own people. The same politicians are still there. The same parties, the same politicians, because they go and bomb those other countries and they feel guilty about it, so they let people come in and live. But they murdered them in the first place, and then they murder their own people. And they're still in our parliaments. So they stay in our parliaments and they radically change the demographic of the country. That's what they've done in Australia. They are still in the parliaments, they stay. The only change they created is, they stayed in the parliament. They didn't stay, those two parties, Liberal, Labor and the Greens are treasonous as well. They're still there, and yet they radically changed the demographic of this country over the past 2 centuries. In 2 centuries, they have replaced almost 2 types of group of people. Aboriginal people and then Australians of European descent. And if you look at Melbourne and Sydney, of the title ownership, economic title ownership, and the asset ownership of this country, it's increasingly foreign. All the cities are owned by foreigners. If you go through the title ownership, that's all treason. That's treason. You don't go in the cities and see Aboriginal people own shops, or even very few Australians of European descent. And that's evidence of treason, that they have bypassed the first group and the second group, and now the third group is taking over. Now, with the economic and military alliances that Liberal and Labor have with foreign nations, particularly Asian nations, it is now an Asian country, pretty much, because they've got control. And they can with the Chinese military, even the Indonesians can walk in here tomorrow. You talk about national security. There is no national security in this country. How can there be national security when foreigners own our assets and resources and ports and and economic. They have economic power, and increasingly they in the government, in the parliaments and the government. Well, then you've abrogated your national security. There is no national security. They're just treasonous, and they've given it over. It's a walkover. It's a walk in the park. It's a takeover. They have invited them to take over. And the only people that can stop it now, you can't stop it at the ballot. You can't. The only people that can stop it are the people who are armed. And that is any Australian-born people in the military and the police, the federal police. And they can collaborate and work with a Australian militia, which there were some men on YouTube making videos about that 12 months ago. An Australian militia or Australian resistance of citizens who may try to get armed, who can work with the federal and state police who are born in this country and the military born in this country, go and arrest those politicians and get the patriot politicians. Go and get them by force if you have to and put them in the parliament. So you go and get them. It's like a coup, but it's using the military and the police for the people born in this country to replace the treasonous politicians. Otherwise it's gone. It's gone. With the Chinese that came in here a week ago to Sydney Harbour for 4 days, that's it. They just proved that they can take over this country today. And it's all over. It's all over Red Rover. So just a few things to think about. You know, I've got so much work to do. All the work I did during the federal election 2019 for Cooper, there's about 100 community groups that contacted me, and I responded to all of them, as many as I could. And I want to read out a list of all the groups that I emailed, and some of them rang me up. And also I did some filming on chemtrails. They were spraying the shit out of my area before the election. I've got the dates here. Where are the dates? April the 11th, I took 3 videos in the middle of the day. And April the 20th, I took 2 videos. 2019, they were spraying the crap out of the sky, and I got really sick at that. Just after that, I was sick for about 5 days. I couldn't breathe, and you know, the chemtrails, they're poisoning the sky. Those politicians are doing. Who are they paying? I've got the exact dates and times that I filmed. This is above my Federal Electric Cooper, so the Preston Reservoir area, and they were spraying the shit out of the sky. Now, the politicians must be paying somebody to do that. Who are they paying? To go up there and spray the sky with chemicals that destroy the human body and make people sick. You know, are they paying the Chinese to do it? Are they paying what? Who is getting paid up there by the politicians, by the government, to spray the crap out of the sky? They should be jailed for that. They're poisoning the sky, you know, and the water where they're putting the water in the food and GMO food, and the water is fluoridated, and you know, they use all these disgusting things. You don't think it's happening. You do the research on it. You can find the research on it everywhere. You know, you go outside where they're spraying the sky, and I've done it 5 times in April. I go and point the camera at the sky and film it. I'm putting it up on the internet right above my area. What are they trying to do? Kill me? Like, right, during a federal election? Is that deliberate or what? Or is it just a coincidence that they're spraying my electorate 4 weeks before the election? You know, call that a coincidence, but I've got the evidence for it. I've got the video footage, and I'm putting it up on the internet. So, anyway, I just hope and pray that the federal and state police and our military act to jail those politicians. And then they go and get all the patriots, you know, Pauline Hanson's politicians, Clive Palmer, myself. There's a whole bunch of other new parties. The Great Australia Party. There's 12 new parties since mid-January. Sorry, I haven't written them out, but I did look through on the Electoral Commission website. You can read out all those parties. There's a women's party in there that was registered. And, you know, there needs to be a lot more women. There has to be equal number of women and men, because you oppress one group over the other if one group is overrepresented in the parliament. And it's just evil. And the point is about all that, it's evil, and those people will end up in hell. They'll end up in hell for what they've done to women and to the vulnerable men and women and children. They'll end up in hell. So I'm doing them a favour by saying these things in the hope they might repent, but they won't repent. And especially for the victims and for the people, the general population is always suffering because the same two parties are controlling everything. It's so obvious. Why can't you just act? Stop harming the public. I'm talking about the police now and the military. Stop harming us and go and arrest them. And you'll feel good about it. And it'll be a life-changing thing for you and your family and for the people of this country. You will be able to stand proud and say, wow, we did this thing, we listened, and we did this thing, we took action, and yeah, sure, we felt scared. I know you're scared about this. You think you can't do it, but you can. You can do it. What is easier, for you to go and arrest 200 politicians or keep harming thousands and thousands and thousands of people as they've been using you for? You must get sick of it. You must get sick of being used that way. And I promise you that I would use you, the police, for good purposes, to help people, to help the homeless, to help society, really help people. And you want to feel good about that sort of work too. You don't want to be used for evil. You don't want to be used for the way they've been using. It's time to turn around and go and arrest them. Get rid of them. It will change this whole nation, and it will become what it is supposed to be. This country is off the track. It's not even anywhere near what it should be. And we're living in the last days. We are so much in danger of being taken over by China or another powerful Asian country because you won't act. But think about all the Aboriginal people born here and all the Australians of European descent and all the Asians who've been here for decades and decades. They're real Australians. They're real Australians, but we're being killed off. We're dying. And if you don't act now, it's too late. It can never, ever be stopped. And the only thing that is stopping the Chinese from coming in here and taking over is God, is a divine spiritual force. The only thing that is stopping us being taken over by a foreign power right now is a divine spiritual force. And if you just turn around and arrest those Liberal, Labor, Greens politicians and put patriots in the federal and state parliaments, that's the federal and the state parliaments, because the state politicians are acting in a criminal manner all the time. They've been doing it for a long, long time. The federal and state politicians, just go and arrest them. Even if you lock them up for 3 or 4 weeks. Well, it's better than locking up the homeless, isn't it? You'll scare the shit out of them that, you know, they have to be removed from the ballot. Those parties have to be jailed and deregistered. Their parties, Liberal, Labor and the Greens, cannot be allowed to be put on the ballot. They cannot go on federal and state ballots anymore. I told them before the 2019 federal election that don't put them on the ballot. Stop putting them on the ballot. And they did it again. So the management of the Australian Electoral Commission should be jailed as well because they don't listen. They don't listen. Stop putting these criminals on the ballot. Since 1984, they have given themselves over $1 billion in electoral funding. You can do the maths by looking at the website. 1984 was when they started giving themselves, Liberal, Labor, they started giving themselves electoral funding from 1984. It was like about 70 cents a vote or something like that. Now it's $2.75 a vote or something. They have given themselves increasingly, every 6 months, it increases incrementally by 3%. And they have given themselves over $1 billion of electoral funding, those two parties. That's how criminal they are. That's just, add that to the list. There's about 100 things on the list that they do that are just evil and criminal. And there's evidence everywhere. The worst of it is when people die in government facilities. They're killing people. They use a range of strategies to do it. When they lock people up in government facilities, when they lock Australians up in government facilities and they die, that's government murder. It's obvious. It's obvious. And it's the politicians doing it. They're driving it. They use public money and the political made law, and they use all these government workers to do it. And it's just evil. It's really disgusting. So that's my message. I'm not going on the ballot again until they act. Until the police act to jail them. And then you can come and get me and the other patriotic political leaders and fly us into the parliament. That's it. Because I'm not going to waste thousands and thousands of dollars and my hard-earned time and effort and my passion and my love just for rigged elections where they can say, oh, well, you'll never get rid of us anyway.